Hey everyone, have you been enjoying this series? If so, there's something really simple you can do to help us. Go on Apple Podcasts or whatever app you've been using to listen to the show and leave us a nice comment and a good star rating. It just takes a minute and it will do wonders for helping new people discover the series. So, thanks a lot and on with the show. This is Mind Your Own Business with Mike and Matt, Racecar Radio's podcast for business owners, entrepreneurs, and aspiring entrepreneurs. I'm David Hoffman, and your voices of reason are Mike Gansel and Matt Plosiak. Today, Mr. Bobby Darival of Home Care at its Best joins us to talk about some F words that give pause, and maybe even some sleepless nights to even the most established business owners. Firing someone and the fear of failure. Mike, hello, good morning.
Good morning, David.
Matthew, how are you, sir?
I'm well today. Thank you. Yourself?
Peachy swell. Our guest today is Bobby Darival. Bobby, why don't you tell us a little bit about your company and who you guys are and what you do?
Awesome. Thank you guys for having me here. This is incredible. So my name is Bobby Darival. I am the COO of Home Care at its Best. We are a licensed home care agency servicing the 5 boroughs plus Nassau County. What we do is we send home health aides and nurses into folks' homes to take care of them.
Is this through something like Medicare or health insurance, or is this private?
Yeah, sure. So we work directly with Medicaid as well as various different health insurance companies and managed long-term care institutions. So we work within the system, within the home care system that's primarily driven by Medicaid.
And so how big an operation do you have? How many nurses do you have on? Nurses are on staff for you, or?
Right. So we have about 80 nurses on staff and about 120 home health aides on staff. So in terms of our roster, we're looking at around 200 caregivers on our roster. The clientele, we have about 76 patients or clients that we service and take care of on a daily basis. Fantastic.
So today, guys, we're going to talk about a difficult and challenging subject, I think, which is the F word of
What
business,
is that, David?
Firing someone. Bobby, I understand you're having a difficulty with a key employee that you brought on maybe not too long ago, and you're trying to figure out the best way to deal with that. Maybe you could tell us a little bit about that situation.
So as a business, we had determined at the beginning of the year that it was time to grow, and we had to grow aggressively. During that process, the determination was made to bring in outside help in the form of someone that's in sales, that is also well-versed in business development, to help grow our census and our clientele. For us, this was kind of a big and splashy purchase, or a big and splashy investment, I should say. So it took a lot of time, energy, and a lot of buy-in from everybody on the team. I should mention that we're also a family-owned business. So it was interesting getting, the input of everyone from the family. But we did make a hire that we thought would work really, really well for us. The person came from tremendous pedigree. They had a good track record of working in other organizations similar to ours and providing results. So that's how it all started, our relationship.
Well, let me actually interject for a moment. I know Bobby because Matt and I and you worked on this together. This was a good guy.
Absolutely.
This was not a bad guy. This was really a good guy. And
He was experienced. He knew the industry.
Right.
And presumably, it seemed like he knew what he was doing.
And it seems like he was making a real effort.
Oh, absolutely. And he was very incentivized too. So the incentives were there.
So where was the failure, do you think? What didn't click with this guy?
The biggest thing for us was expectation. That it just turned out to become a game of expectation. You make a determination when you hire someone, especially in a sales or business development capacity, of, okay, here are the specific targets we need you to hit, right? And everybody kind of understands, all parties understand, okay, we're going to judge everything based off of very specific targets. From where we started to, let's say, month 3 of the new hire being part of the team. At this point, he's assimilated into who we are. He's kind of a part of our culture, and he's out being very, very active and doing everything that we could possibly ask for. Our challenge was not seeing the return, right? And understanding that or trying to figure out why we were not seeing the return. We could not, for the life of us, understand why, if we set out a plan and we're executing the plan and everything's being implemented the way it should, that we're not seeing a specific type of results.
Was this a problem of the salesperson not being able to live up to the potential of the situation, or was it a problem of the expectations being too high?
Right. So I think it was a combination of both. The first, because the environment was changing, right? The business environment was changing. How that person could achieve his sales goals, that was changed. There was a fundamental change that was more regulatory than anything in the business environment. So that was that one part of it.
Maybe give us some context there. What does that mean? What happened, if that's an important part of the story?
Sure. The thing to know about that is, because certain new regulations change the way that, let's say, cases or patients could be referred to an agency, it actually changed the role of someone who's in business development or who's in sales. And so the skill set of our new hire was all of a sudden not as valuable, right? They had to learn a new way of building a pipeline.
Wow, and that happened sort of unexpectedly within those 3 months?
Yes. Yes.
Wow.
But it's not unusual. I mean, it's not unusual at all. Every business encounters changes in the environment. And then good salespeople roll with it. They find another way. They find that if they continue to do the appropriate activities, reaching out, so on and so forth, and doing it the same, consistently doing it, etc., it ultimately begins to work. So I think here, I agree with you, the regulatory changes, etc., happened, but it shouldn't have changed the situation as much.
But the other part of it, in terms of expectations being too high, that's an interesting question, because even in the initial outset, the employee helped set those expectations, right? He came in with a certain, resume, so to speak, of what he can and cannot do. And then us knowing the kind of what the environment was, seeing, okay, this is really going to depress whatever he thinks he can actually achieve.
So you've come to this reckoning. What did you do to deal with that reckoning?
So after month 3, I really began to get involved in the sales part of the business, right? After not seeing results, I came to the determination, okay, I need to go out there with him. I need to see what's happening. I need to see if there's a disconnect, is there a gap?
It strikes me that you hired this person to do a job of work, and now you're out with them, shadowing them, doing it. Like, this is not reducing, this is adding to your workload rather than reducing it at that point.
That's right. And it's because I felt that, I was that engaged. I wanted to be that engaged.
So where I'm guessing at is, here's the key, as you've said, activities leading to results. And that's an element of time. And I think one of the expectations that we all set was, and I think the person in question here also knew that, we had a 6-month window. Or did he believe that as strongly as we did that he had a 6-month window?
Right. And so this was the emotional challenge right here, because of course in these conversations you talk about the forever, right? I want to grow with you forever, and the need and the desire to really grow with the business, because at the end of the day, everybody wants great long-term success. However, it was very clear at the beginning that 6 months was when we were going to reevaluate, this relationship. Once we got to around month 3, month 4, and then you start really determining, okay, are the results matching the activities? It was a challenge to get him to adjust his expectations as the business was adjusting our expectations, right?
Bobby, so after, month 3, you had to, let's say, readjust, and then you're at the end of month 4. Why wait 2 more months?
That's a great question.
And we went through that, didn't we?
We absolutely did. And off of actually your advice, Matt, it was, okay, the point of no return should be, now. For me, emotionally, it was challenging because I thought the point of no return, I still had another month or another 2 months. Why? Because I wanted to give this person a shot, right? And so that was, my own emotions coming into play of not wanting to let go, not wanting to be wrong.
Yes, you don't want to admit your own stuff. But then you also, and I know you said this, then you realize that you're dealing with a human being. Mm-hmm. He's got a family.
Yep.
He's got kids.
Yep.
He's got a life. And you fire him, you're responsible for that, right?
I felt like yes.
So what was that doing to you? Did you lose sleep at night?
Oh, absolutely. I sure did. I lost sleep at night. To be honest, it really tested me from a personal and emotional perspective, but also from a management perspective, because I didn't know if I was a good manager because of weighing these things and feeling like, okay, am I weighing these equally, and should I be weighing these equally? That being, the emotional component of trying to fire someone, and then the business side component of, okay, this is the point of no return. We gotta, cut this off here. I felt like the answer was.
I have a retort. I do agree. It's never fun to fire someone. However, the first allegiance that an owner has is to the health of the company, because you're employing 200 plus people. And if you're, quote, wasting resources, right, eventually it can put the company at risk. And that is unfair to everyone who's there. I like my rule of thumb is you ask yourself the question, well, knowing what you know now about the employee, would you hire that person again? And if it's not an immediate yes, guess what you should be doing? You should be transitioning that person out of the company. I always like to say, show me any company with 10 or more people, at least one person should get fired.
It's very simple. Life is very simple for my partner, Matt, here.
Well, Matt, the executioner Plosiak over here.
He's got some of those things. I have to contend with that on a regular basis. But, but here's the annoying thing about that. He happens to be right a good portion of the time. That drives me crazy.
I'm going to buy you a guillotine for Christmas, Matt.
Thanks.
Yes, I don't think Bobby or I would disagree with you, or maybe even David would disagree with you on that. But it's never so simple. It's not a spreadsheet. It's not an Excel spreadsheet that you look at a number and you say, well, this minus this equals this. It's not that. And
delete.
Right.
Well, I have to say, and I'm sort of saying it in black and white, but I did have to fire my youngest brother once. and so if I can do that, I figure someone could fire, an owner should be able to fire just about anyone.
And maybe as you say, Matt, it's a bigger number of the company and the family, et cetera, than the one person. Yeah, it certainly is. But still, there's an emotional thing that's going on, and you have to contend with that.
But in the end of the process, right, in an exit interview conversation that I had with this hire, I had this gentleman tell me that my expectations were way off, that they were too high.
I'd love to hear about that interview. How did that go?
So I'll keep it PG first and foremost. What was interesting was in that interview was emotions were right there and raw at the very beginning of the meeting, right? As soon as the gentleman figured out what was about to happen, right? This is the morning of firing someone. He had a very raw reaction. And it was because he must have felt caught off guard, which to me, again, that's an expectation that I completely missed, because I thought I had been very clear on the organization's changing expectations, right? I thought it was very clear that, hey, you're just not meeting the needs that we have. But that feeling was not mutual. It was not shared on his side. And so that conversation, it was very tense in the beginning. It kind of went to the way of, let's throw out a couple words and let's let people know how we feel in this moment. But that kind of subsided and really became a conversation of, hey, I know how you feel, but I'm just going to tell you right now, this is where the organization stands. this is what we feel like is the right decision to make, and this is, what's going to be happening going forward.
So, Bobby, you made the decision, you did it, you had the interview, he left. How did you feel after it was over?
Absolute relief. Absolute relief. And I did think of you, Matt, immediately.
That's great. What were you thinking?
I was thinking, Matt told me it was going to be okay, right? Because, I had been told that, hey, this is something you have to go through. You have to make this choice. You already know it's the right choice for you and for the organization. So just make it, right? And so once you go through that process, you make that decision, you all of a sudden say, you know what? My conscience is clear. I feel good about what I did, not because I fired someone, but because I did what I thought was the right thing to do at the right time.
Right. I can't tell you how many owners, managers know weeks, months, sometimes years that they should do it, and they don't.
We'll be right back with more from Bobby, and also more about why messing up might be a good thing, right after these messages. If you're enjoying this show, you might also like some of the other podcasts on Race Car Radio. For instance, try Composition Notebook. Two musicians, close friends who grew up in the same city but leading very different lives, coming together to share their music and help each other figure out art, parenthood, livelihood, and the thousand things that challenge us all as human beings every day. Composition Notebook. Two songwriters, one conversation, endless possibilities. Listen and subscribe now at racecarradio.com. Racecar Radio is proud to support the work of Aya Worldwide, a tenacious and dedicated organization working to address the root causes of poverty in West Africa. Because they believe that who a person is and where they come from should not solely determine what they are able to achieve. To learn about their work and how you can support it, please visit ayaworldwide.org. And now back to Mind Your Own Business with Mike and Matt.
I do have to admit that an owner firing an employee is one of the worst things you can do in your job. And it means that not only did the employee fail, but the owner failed. Because either they didn't hire the right person, didn't train them properly, or some other reason. But it's definitely a mutual situation in general.
Yes, I agree, but I wouldn't say that it's a failure. I'd say it's a mistake, and there is a difference between a failure and a mistake, particularly in business. I think that just maybe off tangent for a moment, talk about mistake versus failure. You must make mistakes in business. If you do not make mistakes in business, then you are not doing business. Plain and simple.
I don't know how I can say this, but I agree with you.
Good. Good. Okay. Now that you make mistakes, it can lead to failure, but failure is not about making mistakes. And
I would agree. And if you're not making mistakes in business, you're not taking enough risks.
There you go. In running a business, you have to accept you're going to make mistakes. You do. If you don't, then it's like you'll never act. You'll never act. And that comes where you said,
That's
if you
a
don't
failure,
act, that's a failure. That is a failure. So that's why I think it's very important to really, really understand the essence, the emotional, the whole gestalt of mistake and failure. I think if you are a business poised for growth, you really do want to continuously invest in the business. And that might be people, that might be hardware, software, it can just be about anything. And so then the question is, as you continue to invest in the business with the purpose of growing it, you're going to make mistakes because you're not in control of just about everything. You may be in control of yourself, but just about everything else, who knows? So here's maybe the point I want to make is, in a failure, you look back and you say, I'm never going to be in a situation where I'm going to fail again. In a mistake, you look back and you say, what did I learn? And by the way, I may very well make that mistake again, and I make it more than once.
So I think I have an anecdote or an experience that kind of brings that to light. So when I became the COO of the business, right, this home care agency, I walked into a situation where we had just lost a major contract, right? And I was now the primary decision maker for the business. And we had just lost a contract that accounted for between 30 and 35% of the whole business's revenue.
Which is huge.
Right. And so we felt that as a failure. We said that's a failure. That's how we saw that experience. It's interesting now, a couple years removed, as the business has stabilized and we've really reevaluated and redetermined who we are, we see that, oh, that's a lot of little mistakes that led to that situation, right? And so now I understand now, in hindsight, my perspective is now, okay, here are the little mistakes that we have to pay attention to avoid a failure of that size. Now, even looking back at it now, I don't see it as a failure anymore. I see it as a lot of little mistakes that I've now learned from. And so no longer is it a failure, but it's just a learning experience. So it's almost interesting that failures and mistakes can be subjective, and you can redetermine what they are. You can reevaluate and kind of grow and see yourself as different. Because you look back and you know what? I understand exactly what happened. At that moment, the world ended for me. But now, after time and after learning from these mistakes, I come to see that as not a failure, but a really, really difficult learning experience.
That's interesting because, having started 7 businesses, I've been in and out of them, obviously, over the last X years.
Yeah.
And, when certainly I've had a couple that failed, went out of business. And I never thought that I failed necessarily. Maybe I wasn't that bright. But I always thought, it was very funny because after, we sold Netland and went our separate ways, I said, there's no way I'm starting another business. I'm not going to do that. It's just too, it's too hard. It's too much pain, etc. And, opportunities come up and you say, gee, I like this opportunity and I love doing things that I had never done before or no one else has done. And so I got involved in solar and LED and those failed too. But now we have, voice of reason, and I look back and I say, well, the only reason I'm here is because I had all those experiences in the past. And I think it depends on your perspective. Did I fail? Yeah, I failed. The businesses failed. Did I fail? I guess so, because the businesses failed. But I don't feel like I failed because I'm at a place now that I love what I do. I enjoy it. I feel like I'm giving back to the business community, and I feel very successful.
And I think you're a great success.
It strikes me the real failure in business might be not so much about money or sales, but it's sort of a personal attitude thing. Like when somebody really fails in business is when they've decided, I'm done. I can't regroup from this mistake. And it's almost an emotional response failure more than something that's on paper.
Right. So it's a great question, and I can tell you here's the struggle that as a business owner and sitting around the room, all of us have, is that what is your identity? Who are you? And the problem is, or the struggle is, I am not my business. My business is not me. There's a significant part of me that is my business, and there's a significant part of the business that's me. But if you define yourself in totality of that business, which, by the way, I have done and was a terrible mistake, which I've learned from, if you do that, then, and you make mistakes, and you then ultimately fail, then how do you pick yourself up? How do you get up in the morning? The reality is that you've got to come to the grips. The business is not you completely, and you are not the business completely. You must establish your own identity. And that identity goes back from the day you were born to the moment you're still alive. That's really the key. I think that's the difference. That's why I keep saying the difference between mistakes and failure. You keep thinking failure, then you are indeed the business, and the business is you. So how do you get up in the morning? Can't do it. You got to have your own identity.
It strikes me, you said something about a difficult learning experience. It strikes me that maybe if something isn't difficult, then you're not going to learn much from it. Like those are the all real learning experiences. Like the more difficult it is, the more you've learned, maybe.
Well, I'll say this, and I think many people who know me have heard me say this many times. You learn from your mistakes, you enjoy your success. You do not learn from your success. The goal of success is to enjoy it. The goal of making mistakes is to learn from it. That's really, I think, how would I say, a philosophy that I follow. I make mistakes, I better learn from it. But if I make some success, hell, I'm going to enjoy it. That's really the key.
Now that we've exhausted that topic, I think I'll mind my own business.
I think you should mind your own business.
I think we all should mind our own business.
I'm going to mind my own business.
Everyone, let's mind our own business.
Thanks for listening to Mind Your Own Business with Mike and Matt. The stars of the show are Mike Gansel and Matt Plosiak of Voice of Reason Consulting, voiceofreasonconsulting.com. Today's guest was Bobby Darival of Home Care at its Best, hcaib.com. I'm David Hoffman, and I produced the show. It was recorded and mixed by Austin Colon. Special thanks to Boucher & Company Social Media Marketing for hosting us for today's recording session. New episodes coming soon include conversations on working abroad, working with partners, and finding people you can work with. Never miss an episode by subscribing to the show on Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Stitcher, and many of your other favorite podcasting apps. You can find those links at racecarradio.com/mindyourownbusiness. And you can also follow us on social media at MYOB Podcast on Facebook and Twitter. Mind Your Own Business with Mike and Matt is a production of Racecar Radio, www.racecarradio.com. Racecar Radio is a division of Citizen Racecar. We tell stories.